soju bottle didn't just break, it detonated. The sound was a sharp, crystalline thunderclap that seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the hallway. I watched in slow motion as the green glass shards exploded against the peeling wallpaper, catching the flickering light of the hallway bulb like diamonds falling into hell. Minho, the man Kenji had called brother only hours ago, crumbled to the floor. He didn't scream, he didn't fight, he just dropped like a marionette whose strings had been cut by the hand of God, his betrayal ending as abruptly and violently as it had begun. For a heartbeat, there was silence, the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that I knew too well. It was the silence of the bush before a predator strikes. It was the silence of a Lagos street right before the riots began. Then came the sound. From the stairwell at the far end of the corridor, a rhythm emerged. Thud, thud, thud. It wasn't the chaotic, stumbling rhythm of drunk salarymen looking for a karaoke room. It was precise. It was heavy. It was the sound of military-grade boots striking cheap linoleum with the weight of authority. My breath hitched in my throat. In Nigeria, that sound meant the mobile police, the Kilingo, were coming to sweep the area. In Seoul, it meant something far more precise and far less merciful. Hunters. I looked down at Kenji. The Oyabun was slumped against the doorframe, his expensive suit now a ruined tapestry of mud, rain, and dark spreading blood. His face was gray, the color of wet ash, beads of sweat standing out on his forehead like pearls. He was dying. I could see it in the way his chest hitched with every shallow breath, the way his eyes were losing focus, swimming in a sea of agony. But when those eyes met mine, the fog cleared for a second. There was no pain there anymore, just a cold, hard realization. Go, he rasped, the word bubbling up through blood. Leave me. I looked at him, then I looked at the 2 car seats sitting on the dirty floor. Hana was asleep, her tiny chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm that felt an insult to the chaos around them. June was awake, his dark eyes wide and silent, staring at me as if he understood exactly how close death was standing to them. Leave you, I whispered, the absurdity of it making me want to laugh. And tell your children what? That I left their father to be butchered in a hallway because I was afraid of loud boots? I grabbed the handles of the car seats. My grip tightened until my knuckles turned the color of bleached bone. My wrists screamed in protest against the weight. I'd been carrying them for hours now, my muscles burning with lactic acid, but I locked my elbows. Move, I hissed, my voice low and dangerous, cutting through the rising panic in my chest. Back exit, now. Kenji stared at me, confusion warring with the pain. Aisha. I said, move. I kicked a shin, not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to shock him. Because in Lagos, when the air changes like this, when the spirits shift, you don't argue, you run. Tu veux, tu sens. We tore through the service door and spilled out into the alleyway behind the golden mic. The weather had turned vindictive. The freezing rain wasn't just falling, it was hammering the city, turning the Seoul asphalt into a sheet of black glass. The wind howled through the narrow gap between the buildings, carrying the scent of frying oil, exhaust fumes, and ozone. My van sat there in the shadows, faithful and ugly. It was a rusted beast of a vehicle I bought for pennies from a scrapyard owner who swore it would die in a week. That was 6 months ago. It was scarred, dented, and groaned when it turned left, but tonight it looked like a chariot sent from heaven. Get in, I commanded, fumbling with the keys. My fingers were numb, slippery from rain and the residual tremors of adrenaline. I dropped the keys. Clatter! Damn it! I cursed in Yoruba, dropping to my knees on the wet pavement. Kenji was leaning against the brick wall, one hand pressed tightly to his side to staunch the flow of blood, the other trying to pull a gun from his waistband. His movements were sluggish, like he was moving through water. Leave it, he groaned, seeing me searching the ground. Run on foot. With 2 babies, I snatched the keys from a puddle, splashing dirty water onto my face. You're delirious. I yanked the sliding door open and shoved the car seats inside, not bothering to check the belts. I slammed it shut and scrambled into the driver's seat. The interior of the van was freezing, smelling of stale delivery food and the vanilla air freshener hanging from the mirror. I jammed the key into the ignition and turned it. Whir, click. Silence. No, I whispered. No, 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 do not do this to me, not today. I pumped the gas pedal, my foot stomping on the floor mat. Start, you wicked machine, I pleaded, my voice cracking. If you disgrace me now, I will sell you for spare parts. I will melt you down into spoons. Behind us, the service door burst open. Shadows spilled out into the alleyway. 3 men, dressed in black rain gear, their faces obscured by masks, moving with the terrifying fluidity of predators who enjoy the hunt. I saw metal glinting in their hands, long, serrated knives and suppressed pistols. Kenji saw them too. From the passenger seat, he turned towards me. The pain was gone from his face, replaced by a terrifying hollow calm. Drive, he said. It wasn't a shout, it was a command that vibrated in the air. I turned the key one last time, putting every ounce of my will into the motion. The engine coughed. It wheezed, and then, with a roar that sounded like a dying dragon, it caught. I didn't wait. I slammed the gear stick into drive and floored the accelerator. The van's tires spun on the slick pavement, screeching in protest, smelling of burning rubber before finding traction. The vehicle lurched forward, throwing us back against our seats. A bullet pinged off the rear bumper. Then another shattered the side mirror, sending a spray of glass into the cabin. Get down! I screamed, hunching over the wheel. I tore out of the alleyway and onto the main street, cutting off a taxi that blared its horn in a long, angry note. I didn't care. I didn't look at the traffic lights. I didn't look at the speed limit. I drove with the desperate precision of a woman who had learned to navigate the chaos of Lagos traffic, where lanes were suggestions and survival was the only rule. I wove through the cars, the van rattling and shaking as I pushed it past 60, past 70. The wipers slapped frantically against the windshield, fighting a losing battle against the deluge. Are they following? I shouted over the roar of the engine in the rain. Kenji was watching the side mirror, the one that wasn't broken. His face was pale, beads of sweat mixing with the rain on his skin. He looked like a ghost haunting my passenger seat. No lights. He murmured. They're not following with sirens. They are hunting quietly. Who is they? I glanced at him, terrified by how much blood was soaking into the fabric of the seat. It was ruining the upholstery. I thought hysterically, how would I ever clean that? Kenji didn't answer immediately. He stared out at the blurring neon lights of Seoul, the pinks and blues and greens streaking past like comets. My cousin, he finally said, the words heavy. Riku. The one who wants the throne? The one who wants the world, Kenji corrected, and he does not care if he has to burn it to ash to rule over it. We drove for 20 minutes in silence, putting miles between us and the ambush. I navigated toward the outskirts of the city, toward the industrial zones where the shadows were deeper and the cameras fewer. The adrenaline was beginning to fade, leaving behind a cold, shaking exhaustion. My hands trembled on the wheel. I was a nursing student. I was a delivery driver. I was supposed to be worrying about my biochemistry exam on Friday and whether I had enough money for rent. Instead, I was driving a getaway car for a Yakuza boss with a bullet wound in his shoulder. Here, Kenji said suddenly. We were in a desolate part of town, under the concrete overpass of the expressway. Rainwater cascaded down from the road above in thick sheets. Here? I looked around. It's the middle of nowhere. Exactly, Kenji groaned as he shifted. Devin, it is marked. They will have the plate number by now. We need to switch. Switch to what? Walking? No. He pointed a shaking finger toward a flickering motel sign about 2 blocks away. The Starlight Inn. It looked like the kind of place where dreams went to die of an overdose. We walk to there. We pay cash. We disappear. I parked the van in the deepest shadow I could find, behind a stack of shipping pallets. I turned off the engine, and the silence that rushed back in was deafening. Just the rain, just the distant hum of the highway. I looked at the car seats in the back. Anna and June were awake now, both of them staring up at the ceiling of the van, surprisingly quiet. "They are good babies," Kenji said softly. He was looking at them through the rearview mirror, his expression unguarded for the first time. There was love there, fierce and terrifying. "They know when to be quiet." "They are traumatized babies," I corrected gently. "They learned silence because noise brings danger." I climbed into the back, unbuckling the seats with practiced efficiency. I hoisted one in each arm. They were heavy, solid weights that pulled at my shoulders, that I welcomed the pain. It grounded me. "Can you walk?" I asked Kenji. He opened the door and stepped out into the rain. His leg buckled immediately, and he grabbed the door frame to stay upright. He squeezed his eyes shut, his breath hissing through his teeth. "Can walk," he lied. "Lean on me," I said, moving to his side. "I am fine." "You're bleeding to death and you're stubborn," I snapped back. "In my culture, we say a man who refuses help is digging his own grave with his pride. Lean on me." Kenji looked at me. He looked at the fierce set of my jaw, the fire in my eyes that burned brighter than any neon sign in Seoul. Slowly, he nodded. He draped his good arm over my shoulder. He was heavy, solid muscle and dead weight. He smelled of expensive cologne, copper blood, and rain. It was an intoxicating, terrifying scent. Together, we walked into the darkness. The motel receptionist was a man who looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s. He sat behind bullet-proof glass, watching a game show on a tiny TV. He didn't look up when the bell chimed. Kenji stepped forward. He placed a roll of cash on the counter, thick, wet. The receptionist looked at the money. Then he looked at Kenji, at the ruined suit, the pale skin, the blood dripping on the floor. Then he looked at me, soaking wet, holding 2 car seats. He didn't ask for ID. He didn't ask for names. He slid a key under the glass. "Room 12, in unit, ice machine is broken." "Thank you," I whispered. The room was a time capsule of bad decisions. The carpet was a suspicious shade of brown. The wallpaper peeled in long, sunburnt strips. There were 2 double beds that sagged in the middle, and a bathroom that smelled of bleach and mildew. But it had a lock. Kenji locked the door. Then he engaged the deadbolt. Then he wedged a chair under the handle. Only then did he allow himself to collapse. He didn't sit. He fell. He hit the mattress with a groan that tore at my heart. I set the babies down on the other bed, quickly checking them. They were dry, warm, and hungry, but safe. I threw a blanket over the car seats to shield them from the sight of what I had to do next. "I need light," I announced, stripping off my wet jacket. "And I need your shirt off." Kenji lay on his back, staring up at the water-stained ceiling. "I am tired, Aisha." "You can be tired later. Right now, you need to be naked." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "At least buy me dinner first." "I bought you a sandwich," I retorted, grabbing my bag of medical supplies. I had stolen them from the university clinic. Forceps, gauze, a bottle of disinfectant, a suture kit. I was a nursing student. I was always prepared for disaster. I knelt beside the bed. "Sit up." He tried. He failed. I moved closer. I reached out and began to unbutton his shirt. My fingers were trembling slightly, brushing against his cold, damp skin. The shirt was ruined, stuck to the wound with dried blood. "This will hurt," I warned. "Do it." I peeled the fabric away. I gasped. It wasn't the wound that shocked me, though it was ugly, a jagged tear in his muscle where the bullet had grazed the muscle. It was the rest of him. Kenji's torso was a canvas of violence and art. Intricate, breathtaking tattoos covered his chest and arms, disappearing up his neck. Dragons with eyes of fire, waves of black ink that seemed to crash against his skin, cherry blossoms falling in a storm. But beneath the art were the scars, knife wounds, bullet holes, burn marks. His body was a map of every battle he had survived. Beautiful, I whispered before I could stop myself. Kenji looked at me, his eyes dark and dilated. Hideous, he corrected lowly. It is a record of sins. Sins can be forgiven, I said softly, pouring disinfectant onto a piece of gauze. Bite this. I handed him a washcloth from the bathroom. He clamped his teeth around it. I went to work. For 20 minutes, the only sounds in the room were the hiss of the rain outside and Kenji's ragged breathing. I cleaned the wound with the precision of a surgeon. I removed the debris. I flushed it with saline. When I picked up the needle to stitch him, my hand steadied. This was my world, blood and flesh and healing. I pushed the needle through his skin. Kenji's body jerked, every muscle pulling tight like steel cables snapping into tension. He didn't make a sound, but his eyes rolled back, fighting the urge to pass out. Stay with me, I commanded, my voice soft but firm. Look at me, Kenji. Look at me. He focused on my face, his gaze intense, burning, stripping me bare. Why? He rasped around the washcloth. Why do you stay? I tied off a stitch. Because I'm an idiot, I said, blinking back tears. And because my father told me that if you save a life, you're responsible for it. You saved me 3 times tonight. Then I am very responsible. I finished the last stitch and taped the bandage in place. I sat back on my heels, wiping sweat from my forehead. My hands were covered in his blood. Kenji spat out the washcloth. He took a deep breath, testing the stitches. Then he reached out with his good arm and touched my face. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, rough and calloused, but incredibly gentle. The touch sent a shock wave through my body, hotter than the fever radiating from him. You are not an idiot, he whispered, his voice rough like gravel. You are a queen. I froze. For a moment in that dingy motel room with the smell of blood and bleach in the air, I wasn't a struggling student. I wasn't a foreigner fighting for a visa. I was seen. I pulled back, my heart racing. Rest, I said, my voice shaking. I have to feed the twins. He was safe for now. The twins were sleeping, but silence in Seoul is a lie, because on the floor, his burner phone began to ring, and the ringtone was a song I hadn't heard since I left Lagos. Subscribe now. You do not want to miss who is on that phone in part 3.